dear viewers, we have with us Ranga Manju, this year's topper, getting a 24th rank and incredible marks in essays paper. I think this is the highest marks that I have heard, 139. It is high mark for any year, and this is among the most impressive marks for this year. Okay, so congratulations to you, Ranga Manju. It has been a long journey for you, a lot of pitfalls, failures. So my wishes to you. Congratulations to you, Ranga.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was certainly a very long journey. Thank you for having me here.
So Ranga, when did your journey start, if I may ask you, and what circumstances forced you into this line or your choice, if you are keen to know about?
Well, sir, since I'm a medical graduate, I graduated in 2019 in the month of March. I had decided a little earlier than that, perhaps a few months before that, that I'll stay clear of the medical line. It was largely personal reasons that motivated me to attempt for the UPSC exam. But nonetheless, my father was also in the services. He, in fact, cleared the UPSC exam in 1990. He was IRS back then. So that was also probably a big motivational factor. But I did not start studying for the exam till 2019. But that was my very first attempt as well in the June of that year. Since then, I have been giving consecutively successive attempts without taking a break. And this year, the 2024 UPSC CSE was going to be my very last attempt at the examination. So in my first attempt, I missed out prelims by quite a large margin. But in my second attempt, I missed out by 2.6 marks. In my third attempt, I missed out by 0.6 marks. And then in my fourth, fifth, and sixth attempt, I cleared the prelims cutoff by greater than 25 marks, clearly easily clearing the IFOS cutoff as well. But in my second and third attempt, it was very hard hitting, in fact, because of the fact that it was just a one question that I should have gotten right that would have allowed me to give another mains. Nonetheless, even after the third failed prelims, I thought about quitting the process very with a lot of intensity and staying clear. And I tried my hand at the MBA exams, CAT, GMAT, GRE, and so forth. And
after medical,
after 3 years of trying UPSC examination. And once I realized that I got a very good score in CAT, GMAT, and GRE. Once I got there, once I was in easy reach of getting my plan B, I realized how badly I wanted my plan A to work. So I continued with my fourth, fifth, and sixth attempts. My fourth and fifth attempts, my mains were not all that bad, but they were still not enough to get across the line. In fact, my essay scores in mains in those 2 years as well was 115 approximately in both years, which would be slightly above average in my understanding. And then in my sixth attempt, me getting rank 24 has a lot to do with the fact that my essay worked out very well. In fact, 139, sir, from my understanding, is the third highest score this year. There was scores in 144 and 141. So this would make it the third highest score. So that is it. So that's about my journey so far.
So Rangamanju, is a very interesting background that you have. So if I ask you, you did not start preparation while in graduation, correct?
No, sir, I did not start preparation while in graduation.
So do you think that was a mistake, or that was a good thing that you did? Was it possible to start while in graduation? Because medical sciences in itself is a behemoth to manage. Would you recommend students start from graduation?
So if I could rewrite my journey and retrace my path in some way, I would have started in my second year of MBBS, because covering the, let's say, the NCRTs or getting a hold of some current affairs, etc., does not require much time. It just requires maybe an hour reading and so on. Especially those who start early may end up in service at an earlier age. In fact, in my case, I'll be entering service at the age of 29, which, if nothing else, will delay me the highest honors of secretaryship in the government of India. So we will miss out on such opportunities should we not start early. So I think it is possible for people to start in a graduation like medical sciences as well. Of course, in some years, they may not be able to study as intensely, but I think it's definitely possible.
In your college, you can still do your basic readings. I mean, although I still feel you should not join a full-fledged course that robs you of your graduation studies. But NCRTs, you are right. And getting a flair for newspaper reading, current affairs. Yeah, you could have done that.
Right. Right.
So what was different? I mean, the first attempt, you say you missed out by substantial mark.
Yes, sir.
And then after second, third attempt, you qualified fourth and fifth. So what was different in your first attempt? What was missing? And what did you do in maybe third or fourth attempt that you got a leap of almost 20-25 marks?
Well, sir, in my very first attempt, I did not know the word Lakshmikant. In fact, that a book called Patti existed. That was my mistake. I went in to try testing the waters. But in my second and third attempt, obviously, I knew the structure of the exam a little better and had studied my content better. But what worked differently from my third to fourth attempt was definitely not more hours of studying. By then, I think had covered all the resources. It was an understanding that I developed for the prelims exam, which somebody sat me down and made me understand very clearly that even the toppers don't know more than 35 questions. So everyone is just applying their minds in the other 65 questions for the other questions. So we have to get better at logical deduction and
excellent
work to an extent. So the critical analysis and reasoning is what I started working on more in my fourth attempt. And I studied lesser, in fact, in my fourth attempt for the prelims. And I think I scored substantially more than the cutoff that year.
That's a brilliant piece of point, Rangamanju, because that's what we as teachers also suggest. It is not about reading too much. Once you have done the base, consolidated that, then you need to apply how to get the correct answer from what you do not know perfectly.
Right.
Linkages and all of that. So how did you achieve this? And I'm curious there now. So when you say critical thinking, and so if I was to tick off 3-4 points, these 3 things, if you do, you can manage. What was that?
It was actually, sir, one, to be calm enough even when you see a question which we have no idea about.
Excellent.
Foremost to this process. Secondly, sir, to try to understand if we can eliminate any option from the bouquet of knowledge in the universe of UPSC knowledge that we already have. So it is basically to try to reason with common sense as well. Whether is it possible to eliminate sentences before you can arrive at a certain option. I will take another example for this, sir. It was a UPSC CSE 2022 paper. It was a question on UN Credentials Committee. Now, the prelims question, it had 3 statements under it. Now, anybody who reads this, let's say a first timer is reading this, they'll think, the veterans will know this, they've studied more. The veterans reading this will also know that nobody ever studies this. But once we know that it is not something that is essentially expected of us, we'll see what are the clues are there in the question itself that help us negotiate the question. So in this question, especially, I remember the second statement said that they conduct meetings at certain intervals. It said somewhere in March, in June, and then September, and that's it. So I had a logical proposition in mind. So between September and next March, there's 6 months in between. Why would they have once in a quarterly meeting at one point of time and then a biannual meeting at another point of time? Clearly, that statement didn't seem to make sense.
It's either biannual or it's quarterly. It can't be both at the same time.
Can't be both. So it has to be, should be some logical consistency. I thought more likely than not that the statement is wrong. So once you eliminate that sentence, the options, the way they were constructed, it seemed like the first statement said that the UN committee answers to the Security Council. And in the last statement, it says that the UN committee answers to the General Assembly. Now, I know enough about the UN to understand that these are 6 organs and different organs vested with different powers. So ideally, you're not going to have the same body answering to both because of the functions they perform. So only one of the statements could be right. So it turns out that the answer was right in that year. Absolutely no knowledge at all that I had, except for the fact that UN has 6 primary principal organs and using logic more than anything. So the courage to attempt more should be tied to the fact that we don't really need absolute knowledge of what UPSC has asked. Just a generalistic understanding will do.
I love the 2 words that you use, that you have to negotiate the questions.
Right. Sir.
And you use the word, the courage to take on the questions.
Right. Sir.
You cannot play safe. If that's the message you are telling me, you can't play safe. Look at the question. Common sense is another key word that you're using. I'll take back quite a bit of pointers for the students here. Excellent. Right. So I think it was with time that you grew into the subject in that case. It was no longer bookish, mechanical. You grew in subjects. Okay.
Absolutely.
Rangamanju, what is your assessment of your hold in current affairs? Are you okay types? Are you really confident? Are you,
So
dicey types?
my current affairs, I would say that about 50% of my time would be invested in current affairs in my first 2 3 attempts. I thought current affairs was the basis for UPSC. If all the attempts have been successful, the portion of time I've spent on current affairs is reduced. In fact, for this year, the usual source that I refer to, it's PT 365. I did only one module of it, that is international relations, nothing else. And even for mains, I did not look at the mains 365 module except for the module on environment, and that too only selected topics. I would read the newspaper diligently. The Hindu was my source. I think it is still a fine source. So, current affairs, the value, the importance given to it is overstated. We need a general understanding of it, but I think the value is a little overstated.
Marvelous. I feel like you are echoing some of the ideas. I think people overdo current affairs. And the best part is, even if they are over-indexing current affairs, the actual study is less. People
Right,
worry about current affairs more
right.
rather than actually study. Either way, they're not studying. Okay. And these compilations, I personally have an issue with the compilations. They keep
Right.
making the compilations bulky and bulky, hoping that questions will come from that. Okay, and then they mess up. Okay,
Right.
so marvelous, marvelous. So current affair is not to be over-indexed, but yes, you should have a good reading. Okay, good understanding. Excellent. Now about your mains marks.
Right, sir.
You have scored decently across the years. It was not a tragedy in any case,
Right, sir.
barring maybe a couple of papers. So
Right.
how did you approach answer writing? What was your strategy? Because students mess up. So say I take a subject, how do I do the basics? How do I understand concepts? At what stage do I write answers and tests? If something on that, Ranga Manju, please.
Sir, so I actually want to recall my father's words, my late father's words. He had told me back then itself that answer writing was a reason for his success back then. And that is true even today. Nothing has changed. If you want success in mains, answer writing is how you get there. In fact, sir, for the successful attempt, preceding my successful attempt, where I got the 833 marks in mains, I invested a lot of time in answer writing. I would write 6 to 7 questions every day diligently without fail. Maybe Sunday I take a break. And especially during prelims and mains, the interval, I've written 10 questions daily. Now, sir, my approach to answer writing was obviously we start with PYQs and then we see what are the best answers to the PYQs. And then we see some of the toppers' copies, the ones uploaded online, to see the questions they've attempted, how they have negotiated the questions again. Once we start understanding that all the toppers, the ones that they have written within a time frame, the answers are not extraordinary. They are just above average, but they are consistently above average, the ones who score higher. We start probably believing that we don't need perfect answers for everything. And once we have studied the subject well enough and we do a little bit of answer writing, we'll also be able to produce the average answer. The difference between an average and an above average answer would be perhaps 1 or 2 extra points, maybe one value addition in some way, maybe a map here, a map there. Something to make it intro or conclusion could be a little more better than average to make it stand out. But outside of this, the practice is more about ensuring that answers can be written within the stipulated time and the paper can be completed within the stipulated time. So even if you are to get, like, say, a above average marking in every question, you're getting a better than average marking.
Even a half a mark across question builds up into a 30 or 40 marks eventually.
Across in the 4 papers that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
My approach to answer writing was I do not want to chase exceptional scores. I just want to get above average in everything. And that clearly worked in my favor this year as well. I've not gotten a bad score in any GS paper this time. Maybe ethics could have been a little better. But I think UPSC is a little unpredictable. I think my ethics answers are the best, but sometimes the examiner may disagree. So we can't predict it, but we can always ensure that with good amount of answer writing practice, your scores will never go down to the 80s and the 90s. It will definitely be in the hundreds or the 110s. It will never go down that much. GS3 has been marked harder and tougher, so that score is approximately
80s and 90s, yes.
80s and 90s in GS3.
So if I sum this up, number one is it is continuous practice.
Yes.
And 6, 7 answers daily and 10 answers before the mains maybe.
Yes.
Don't go for extraordinary answers.
No.
Try track completing the paper and keep answers above average in general.
Yes.
Right? So at what stage of preparation should a person start answer writing?
So this is in fact a question.
When did you start off writing? What worked for you?
This is my mistake, but I started answer writing only after I qualified prelims in the fourth attempt. That is my mistake. I would never advise this to anyone. And in fact, if you see my scores and my mains marks, that is reflected in the lack of improvement in my GS answers as well. We need practice for mains answer writing, which means that maybe after 60-70% of the subject is complete, let's say even in somebody who has started studying, even before the conclusion of their entire first round of reading, even if 70% of the subject is complete, they can start practicing answer writing, because it genuinely takes some time to understand how to write an answer. And we can't directly be perfect when we start writing. So it's good to practice even with 60-70%.
Some writing should start off. Okay. At least do some writing before January of the year you're giving your prelims.
Oh, definitely.
Because last 4-5 months will be into prelims, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Right then. It's a fair idea there. Now come to the mother question that you really cracked it, your essays.
Yes.
Because I believe essays is not current affairs. Essay is not a standard answer.
Right.
Okay. And you are the best person to tell us how the transition happened. Yes. From 115, 113, the transition to almost 130, 140 types.
Right, sir.
So what were you doing wrong earlier and what did you do good this time?
So, sir, I think I have been writing for a very long time. That is since standard, when I was in 8th standard and earlier, I've been writing. I thought, and I was rewarded very highly in my schooling and my college years because of the fact that I would write in a certain fashion, which is that sometimes, sir, when people like me who have a flair for writing in general, they start writing, we try to impress ourselves by using complex language and using very rich similes, metaphors, etc., in order to make it an exercise of literature, not just an exercise of writing. So this was the same framework with which I attempted my 4th and my 5th attempt in mains, the 2 essay papers where I roughly secured
You wrote it like a literature essay?
Yes, I would write it like a literature essay. My target is myself. The target audience is myself. I'm reading it for myself. That's how I wrote it.
Okay.
And this was honestly, see, even though the score of 115 is not bad, it was definitely not to my potential, in my opinion. And I think the reason I was not getting that high score was because my essays were not simple to read. It would require the examiner to simply strain himself to even understand what I was writing. I had realized back then that because of people pointing out to me that they would simply say, "What have you written?" after reading a sentence. The sentence is long. It has many nice fancy words in it. But the question arises in the reader's mind: what have you written? What are you trying to say? So this is some sort of a feedback I received, especially because it was my last attempt and I was trying to make an outreach as to why I should change in my essay and what I can potentially change. I found that the complexity was an issue in my earlier attempts, which I completely shed in my final attempt especially inside the examination hall. I kept it very simple. My understanding was, should a 10th standard student pick up this essay, he should be able to read and understand it in the first instance. I think what is being rewarded even now, sir, is possibly an examiner who picks it up and immediately understands what the writer is trying to say. Of course, if we were to write, let's say, with different dimensions outside of the pestle approach and show some other different ideas, etc., we will get a slightly higher score. But I think it is critical for us to keep it simple, because everyone who talks to me and asks me, how did your essay scores increase? They make again, a mistaken assumption they have in their heads that, oh, fancy English is what it gets, because I can speak and communicate very easily. They think that it's the holdover language and command over vocabulary that gives you the highest score. But I can definitively say that my 4th and 5th attempt, it was extraordinary. In fact, in my 4th attempt, when I wrote an essay, it was on poets of the unacknowledged legislators of the world. I picked it differently, and it was a subject of strength for me. Even my 2nd essay was something that I did well in that year. I, in fact, patted myself on the back because I was so impressed with my own essay. And I told myself, I'm not getting a score less than 145, 150. And turns out that I was getting 115 that year. So if I have to summarize my understanding of what worked for an essay, we can maintain the complexity of ideas, but the language must be simple. It must be understood very easily by an examiner in the very first instance. In fact, seeing some of my friends who've also secured very well 120-ish scores in essay this year. Grammar is not that critical to getting that high score. You can make the occasional error here and there in syntax, and you're not going to be punished or crucified for it, I would say.
The language is ruled out. Keep it simple language. Even grammatical errors is fine.
Some,
as long as
they are not glaring and they don't hurt the eye.
So, how do you make your essays interesting? What did you add something?
Yes, sir. In this case, I thought to myself, I am going to force the examiner to see that I have that light writing ability. Or so I did not want to do it with complexity of linguistic sentences this time. So what I did was I added poems in the starting and the end of my essays. So I would write the poem on the spot. In fact, even in my rough work, it would be very evident that I was working on my essays on the spot.
You have done your own creativity there rather than memorize and
rather than memorize anything, I would very pertinent to the theme that I have picked, I would construct an essay and I would ensure that it's visible. In fact, the visibility of the essay was so much so that if I'm writing in my blue color ink pen in the rest of the essay, the poem would be in black.
It stands out in the entire presentation.
So in the starting and the end, I would keep these two things very visible.
And does that formula of start the essay with a story, start the essay with a quote, does that work? What's your experience having talked to toppers?
So I have never tried the story approach, but I have tried the quote approach.
That works for you.
Last few years. I don't think I have been rewarded for necessarily using a quote. And I am somebody who has, a good understanding of classical literature in English. I have a lot of these books that I can easily recall and somehow try to link it to the theme that I have picked. So I have always used good number of books and so on. But I don't think they necessarily work if you are force-fitting them. I think it has to be very organic.
And very organic, and
if it's not there, I don't think it's working. But if in my case this year, maybe the examiner has seen that there is some amount of extra effort I put into the essay, which is very visible in the fact that I have actually constructed an essay on the spot. Was that possibly the reason I've been scored higher? I don't know. So I mean, we don't know how the processes work, but it could.
There's something exciting about that message that you must have given. It's not that it's completely random. So yeah.
Right, sir. And in fact, in my second essay, I was crying, saying that I couldn't conclude it very well. It was a hurried conclusion because I was writing a poem, etc. And I'd actually written the poem before the conclusion. I was very disappointed in the fact that I couldn't conclude it very easily or happily. So sometimes, even if you've done,
you miss out. How many dimensions you cover in an essay?
So I would not restrict it to the number. I can't tell you numbers, but I will tell you that I expand it on a scale that I've not seen others do it. For instance, I always use one element of literature, classic literature, either Indian English literature. I don't refer to my own regional literature because I think it's too exotic, esoteric, and they won't recognize it. But English literature with...
So your dimensions have some depth. It's not a mechanical listing of pestle principles, technological, ecological. Fact, it's not pumping too many dimensions. Pick up few and go deep into it, right?
Yes.
Can I say you work with 4 or 5 dimensions maximum?
So I don't necessarily work that way because this time I didn't even think of dimensions. I just thought about flow. What is more important flow? So I was reasoning the theme of the essay.
Reasoning, okay.
And then the reasoning was supported by some dimensions. So there were 3 reasons, and each of them may have had 1 or 2 supportive dimensions. But I looked beyond pestle. I moved into music. I moved into physics, and I moved into sports in order to support my dimensions.
So when you're doing this, what's your objective? Are you trying to show the examiner the width of what you know, or you are trying to establish the fact that your understanding is deep? Or you're trying to make your essay a bit more diverse in terms of different perspectives? What's working for you here?
So my intention was, if they were to pick up the essay before me and after me, it has to have content that is not reflected there. In the sense that I am assuming some of them are using pestle approach, and I do not want to be somebody who
Repeated.
shows the same sort of
You want to keep it unique,
unique.
different, show the depth.
Yes, sir.
And if I may ask the uncomfortable question,
Right,
okay,
sir. Right, sir.
how could I contribute to your process, or how did Edukemy contribute to the process?
Right, sir.
Okay.
So actually, if you recall, sir, me and Sachin, Dr. Sachin BG, we came one of those days, and you met us, and then you spent about an hour with us, going through both of our essays, and you took your time out for that. And you did a good, as in you didn't really read and hurry through it. You were doing it in front of us, so you took your time reading both the essays and quite thoroughly. So in my case, you also made me aware of what I was being told, but you reaffirmed it for me in some sense. Because you said that my essay clearly, it is good. You pick it up and you know that the writing is good, but it takes some time for the evaluator to understand what I'm trying to say, because it is not easy for it to be said. You also made me aware of the fact that I tend to sometimes jumble up things. I don't remember the exact essay that I showed to you. The order you said, it could have been a little more lucid if it were rearranged. I remember this. So this I thought is more fitting for the fact that the flow is disrupted in some cases if you rearrange the topics in a certain fashion. And then again, it was also that reaffirmation that Dr. Sachin and I, we were both writing good essays. We were doing well. It just needs that a little bit of luck to work on that day, no doubt, as well as a little more effort into correcting all these easily visible errors, which then would make it like the examiner does not have a reason to deduct marks. Like even if he does not want to give you that 75, he shouldn't give you that 40-45 per essay, leaving us with a 90. So you in fact, I remember you, Sachin is somebody who was a little more pressing in this respect, and he said, "So what would you rate our essays?" And you said, "No, you'll definitely get this 115, 120, and beyond that will require a little better. Maybe on that day, on the day of the examination, depending on the themes that you picked, you may get a good score or not." I remember this reassurance very vividly, even today, when we walked into your Edukemy office.
I'm glad it worked, but I tell my students ultimately it's lot of depth you get with you.
Right.
We can only sharpen and polish some aspects.
Right.
So I think you had it there. So
Right.
so thanks for nice words.
Thank
It
you.
encourages us also as teachers. Also sometimes we also not very sure what's working. But
Right.
now that you've said it, I get that. And one last word: what would you recommend students if they want to score good in essays?
Yes. So one thing is, sir, even though I've been writing for a very long time, and I know that I have a hold over an essay, which on an average day should have at least fetched me 115 again. I put a lot of practice into it. There were 14 essays that I wrote this year as well. In fact, all of them were timed essays. Four such essays I remember writing in your institution. And in addition to this, I did brainstorming for about 3 weeks in the lead up to the examination. One essay within 17 minutes compulsorily. Completely new. The themes can be lifted from the internet. There are so many such poems, etc., that can double up as themes. So pick something out and compulsorily work on it. In fact, I have a big bundle of 50 plus brainstormed essays. This is
Wow. More than writing, it's about thinking through the essays.
Thinking through the essays, because I had by then discovered that I can write an essay in 3 hours, two essays in 3 hours. But I would want to know how much more I can generate before that will allow me to construct my essays. And since I'd already decided that I want to have a poem of my own and in the starting and end, I need a little practice.
Practiced on those lines, yeah.
So the brainstorming I did, so it is not to take the essay lightly. It is a subject that, like in my case, it can give you glory as well. I mean, I may not be getting my home cadre despite topping my state, but I will be getting my neighboring state and not be going further away, because cadre determination sometimes is something that we may all be affected by. So the rank as well as your cadre essay can play a very big role.
Essays is deciding. Essays becomes deciding.
And if nothing else, I know some of my friends who scored just 65, 75 marks this year, despite writing what I think was okay essays. So it will not eliminate you from the process, because I think if you write a very shoddy or an average essay, there's a possibility that UPSC could
eliminate
hard as well.
What's a good time to start essays practice? Right. My personal thing is that people ignore it till the last 1 month of the examination.
Right.
When would you recommend to start essays?
Let's assume, sir, I was giving this year's mains examination, and we're recording this just a day before prelims of this year. If I have 88 days left, I would have written at least 2 essays per week in the lead up to the mains examination, because it's a GS paper on its own. The only
50
way
marks.
to get better at it is with practice, and this is the only amount of practice we can give. And as you can see, even the rank 1 of this year has secured just 100 marks in essay. But I have secured 139, and I'm in reaching distance of her rank only because of the fact that an essay has come to my favor. So you have to give it a good amount of practice. I would, in fact, advise that even before prelims, while you're studying for the examination, because you always have to think about mains, giving one essay once in 2 weeks while you start itself is a very good idea. It builds the ability to write essays very fluently in some sense.
Will you recommend students starting the essay, maybe within 2-3 months of the GS classes itself? Some writing practice?
Absolutely, especially because the essays of now, this era, we have at least one philosophical essay, and that does not require any sort of exposure to GS.
Thank you for saying that, Rangamanju. But I insist, essays does not require current affairs. It does not require GS content. It requires thinking.
Yes.
You can start essays writing maybe day 1 off and keep doing that across 2 to 3 essays every month. Okay, so
yes, sir.
Thank you for saying that.
Right, sir.
Okay.
Right.
My wishes to you, Ranga Manju. You do well in life, great career, be a great officer. I will always be proud of the fact that in some ways we're associated, although brief, but that was only what I could have done. I'm proud to have been part of your journey.
Thank you,
and
sir.
Please come down and meet me whenever you're in Delhi.
Yes, sir.
I'll be more than happy to sit down for a few minutes, a cup of coffee maybe.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Will do, sir.
My blessings to you, my wishes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.